The peaceful invitation that became a declaration of war. The stars had been silent for so long that humanity almost forgot they were watching. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Collective adjusted his ceremonial robes as his vessel approached the primitive blue world. The ship's sensors had been monitoring Earth's electromagnetic emissions for months, cataloging their crude radio signals and primitive internet chatter. To the Collective, humanity appeared to be exactly what they expected: another backward species ripe for integration. The Zephyrians had perfected this process across 300 worlds. Arrive with overwhelming force, offer peaceful integration, wait for the inevitable surrender, then absorb the new species into their vast empire. It was efficient, clean, and profitable. Veltar had overseen dozens of such acquisitions, and each one followed the same predictable pattern. His communication officer, a slender Zephyrian with pale blue skin, turned from her console. "Ambassador, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the surface. They appear to be arguing with each other about who should respond to us." Veltar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Typical primitive behavior. Their divided leadership would make the integration even simpler. He had studied the report's fragmented nation-states, competing ideologies, constant warfare among themselves. These humans would practically beg to join the Collective once they saw the benefits of unified leadership. "Open a channel to their largest population center," he commanded. "Let's get this over with." The transmission crackled to life, and a human face appeared on the screen. The being was surprisingly symmetrical, with forward-facing eyes that betrayed its predatory ancestry. But Veltar felt no concern. These creatures still used chemical propulsion to escape their gravity well. They were no threat to a civilization that had mastered faster-than-light travel centuries ago. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Coalition," the human said. Her voice was steady, professional, but there was something in her eyes that Veltar couldn't quite identify. "You are in Earth's orbital space without permission. State your intentions." Veltar smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Greetings, primitive ones. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Collective. We come offering you the greatest gift possible: membership in our glorious empire. Your species will be uplifted, educated, and given purpose under our guidance." Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. "And if we decline this generous offer?" The question surprised Veltar. In his experience, primitive species either cowered in fear or immediately accepted. Direct questioning was unusual. "Decline? My dear creature, you misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. Your integration into the Collective is inevitable. We are offering you the chance to make this transition peaceful." "I see." Chen paused, and Veltar noticed she seemed to be listening to someone off-screen. "Ambassador Veltar, I need to be clear about something. Earth has dealt with bullies before. We have a long history of people who thought they could just take what they wanted from us. It never ends well for them." Veltar's amusement grew. The creature was actually threatening him. How delightfully naive. "Admiral Chen, I don't think you understand the situation. Our fleet consists of 50 dreadnoughts, each one capable of reducing your entire planet to ash. We have conquered civilizations far more advanced than yours. Your resistance would be noted in our records as a brief footnote. Nothing more." The human's eyes hardened, and suddenly Veltar recognized the expression he'd seen earlier. It wasn't fear or confusion. It was calculation. "Ambassador, let me make something clear to you. We've been monitoring your fleet since you entered our solar system. We've analyzed your ship designs, your energy signatures, your communication protocols. We know exactly what you're capable of." "And?" Veltar asked, though he was beginning to feel less amused. "And we're not impressed." The transmission ended. Veltar stared at the blank screen for a moment, processing what had just occurred. No species had ever simply hung up on him before. His communication officer looked equally stunned. "Sir," she said hesitantly, "should we interpret that as a rejection of our offer?" Before Veltar could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The tactical officer's voice cut through the noise. Ambassador, we're detecting massive energy buildups across the human homeworld. Multiple launch signatures, thermal blooms consistent with primitive rocket propulsion. How many? Veltar demanded. Thousands, sir. They appear to be launching everything they have. Veltar felt a chill run down his spine. The humans weren't panicking, they were mobilizing. Within hours, Earth's orbital space filled with crude but functional defensive platforms. Human spacecraft, primitive by collective standards, but numerous beyond belief, formed defensive formations around their planet. The collective had expected surrender. Instead, they found themselves facing a species that responded to overwhelming odds by doubling down. War Chief Krelnok, Veltar's military counterpart, materialized on the bridge via hologram. His scared face bore the expression of a professional soldier who had just realized his intelligence reports were wrong. Ambassador, we have a problem. The humans aren't behaving according to any known pattern. Our psychological profiles predicted compliance or chaotic panic. Instead, they're showing coordinated resistance. They're primitives, Veltar insisted, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Their weapons can't possibly threaten our shields. Krelnok's expression grew grim. That's what we thought. Then they started shooting. The first human attack came not from their orbital defenses, but from the surface itself. Massive electromagnetic railguns, hidden beneath the planet's major mountain ranges, fired tungsten projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. The collected shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, were completely unprepared for kinetic bombardment at that velocity. 3 Zephyrian cruisers simply ceased to exist, torn apart by projectiles that hit with the force of small nuclear weapons. How? Veltar whispered, watching the tactical display in horror. How did they develop such weapons without us detecting them? His science officer, reviewing the attack data, looked up with wide eyes. Sir, based on the trajectory analysis and power requirements, these installations have been under construction for decades. They built them in secret, underground, using their primitive mining technology to hollow out entire mountain ranges. The implications hit Veltar like a physical blow. The humans had been preparing for this day long before the collective arrived. They had detected the Zephyrian scout probes, analyzed the threat, and spent years developing countermeasures. This wasn't the panicked response of a primitive species, it was the calculated preparation of natural-born strategists. Commander Jake Morrison of Earth's Special Operations Command watched the alien fleet through his tactical display aboard Luna Station. Unlike the politicians who had handled the initial contact, Morrison was a soldier. He understood what he was looking at: 50 ships designed for intimidation and overwhelming force, but not for fighting an enemy that refused to be intimidated. Admiral, he reported to Chen via encrypted channel. Their formation is classic shock and awe. They're positioned to maximize visual impact, not tactical effectiveness. These aren't warriors, they're occupiers. Chen's voice crackled back. Assessment. They've been conquering species that surrender before the shooting starts. Their tactics assume compliance. They're not ready for a real fight. As if to prove his point, the Zephyrian fleet began to advance in perfect formation, broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. Morrison almost felt sorry for them. They had no idea what they were walking into. Dr. Elena Vasquez, working in a hidden laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps, put the finishing touches on humanity's most closely guarded secret. For months, her team had been reverse engineering technology from Zephyrian scout probes shot down by Earth's defense grid. The aliens' computing systems were powerful but predictable, designed for efficiency rather than security. Upload complete, she announced to her team. The virus is embedded in their communication protocols. Every message they send will carry our payload. Within hours, the Zephyrian fleet found their computer systems compromised. Navigation flickered, weapons targeting became unreliable, and their tactical coordination dissolved into chaos. The humans had turned the collective's own technology against them. High Counselor Zixthak, monitoring the situation from the collective's home system, felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: genuine concern. The reports from the front were disturbing. Humans weren't just resisting, they were winning. "Explain to me," he commanded his advisors, "how a primitive species is inflicting casualties on our fleet." His chief strategist, an ancient Cypherian with decades of conquest experience, studied the tactical reports with growing unease. "My lord, I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood what we're dealing with. These humans, they don't fight like any species we've encountered." "What do you mean?" "Most species develop technology to avoid conflict. They see warfare as a failure of civilization. But humans, they've weaponized everything. Their entertainment, their sports, their literature, it's all about conflict. They don't just prepare for war, they embrace it." Zixthak's claws extended involuntarily. "You're saying they're naturally aggressive?" "Worse, my lord. They're naturally strategic. Every human child grows up consuming stories about underdogs defeating superior enemies. They'd been training for this moment their entire lives. As a species, the battle for Earth's orbital space raged for 6 days. The Zephyrian collective, accustomed to quick victories, found themselves locked in a grinding war of attrition with an enemy that refused to break. Human forces used guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, and psychological warfare that left the alien invaders constantly off balance. On the 7th day, something unprecedented happened in the annals of collective expansion. They retreated. Ambassador Veltar, his ceremonial robes now torn and stained, stood before the emergency session of the Collective Council. His report was met with stunned silence. "The humans aren't just primitive, they're pretending to be primitive," he explained. "They've been studying us, preparing for us, planning for us. Every system we thought made us superior, they found a way to turn against us." High Counselor Zixthak leaned forward in his throne. "Are you telling me that a single world has defeated our expansion fleet?" "I'm telling you that we've awakened something we don't understand," Veltar replied. "The humans aren't just another species to be conquered. They're what we used to be before we became soft. They're predators, and we've made ourselves their prey." As the Collective Council debated their next move, intercepted human transmissions revealed a chilling truth. Earth wasn't just preparing to defend itself, it was preparing to hunt. Human engineers were reverse engineering collective technology. Human strategists were planning offensive campaigns, and human diplomats were reaching out to other species oppressed by the collective. The galaxy was about to learn why. On a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, evolution had produced the most dangerous predator the universe had ever seen: humanity. When predators meet their match, 3 months after the failed invasion of Earth, the galaxy began to understand that everything had changed. High Counselor Zixthak stood before the vast holographic display in the collective's war room, watching red indicators spread across star maps like a disease. Each red dot represented a system in revolt, a world throwing off collective rule, a species that had suddenly found the courage to fight back. The humans hadn't just defeated the invasion force, they had become a beacon of hope for every oppressed world in the galaxy. "How many?" he asked his intelligence chief, though he dreaded the answer. 47 systems in open rebellion, my lord. Another 100 showing signs of unrest. The humans have been broadcasting their victory across subspace channels, along with detailed tactical information on how to fight our forces. Zixthak's claws scraped against the metal of his throne. In 300 years of expansion, the collective had never faced simultaneous uprisings on this scale. The humans had done more than defend themselves, they had shattered the myth of collective invincibility. And the humans themselves. That's more concerning, my lord. The intelligence chief activated a new display showing the Sol system. They're not behaving defensively anymore. The tactical display revealed a transformed solar system, where once there had been a handful of primitive space stations, now vast orbital shipyards ringed Earth, Mars, and the asteroid belt. Human vessels, sleek and deadly, patrolled the outer system in formations that spoke of military discipline rather than civilian exploration. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, humanity's first true warship. Built from a combination of human engineering and reverse-engineered collective technology, it represented everything the aliens had failed to understand about humanity: the ability to adapt, to learn, and to turn an enemy's strengths into weaknesses. Commodore, his communications officer reported, "We're receiving transmission from the Kepler 442 system. The Vaxian resistance is requesting immediate assistance. Collective forces are implementing pacification protocols." Morrison studied the tactical display. Kepler 442 was 12 light-years away, well outside Earth's traditional sphere of influence. 6 months ago, humanity had barely achieved interplanetary travel. Now they were being asked to intervene in interstellar conflicts. "Admiral Chen wants to see us become the galaxy's protectors," he mused to his executive officer. "The question is, are we ready?" His XO, Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos, had been with him since the defense of Luna Station. She understood both the opportunity and the danger. "Sir, every species the collective has conquered is watching us now. If we help the Vaxians and succeed, we prove that the collective can be beaten anywhere. If we fail, we prove we were just lucky the first time." Morrison made his decision. "Set course for Kepler 442. Maximum burn. And send word to Fleet Command we're about to find out what humanity is really capable of." Dr. Elena Vasquez had moved her operation from the Swiss Alps to Titan Station, where the low gravity and unlimited space allowed for experiments impossible on Earth. Her latest project made even her optimistic projections seem conservative. She wasn't just reverse engineering collective technology anymore, she was improving it. The Zephyrians built their computers for efficiency and control, she explained to the team of human and alien engineers working under her. But they never considered security as a primary function. Their entire network architecture assumes compliance from member species. Her chief programmer, a human genius named David Kim who had cut his teeth hacking corporate networks before the invasion, grinned as he uploaded his latest creation. "If they want a network based on control, let's give them some chaos they'll never forget." The virus they unleashed didn't just corrupt collective computer systems it learned from them. Every collective installation it infected became a node in a vast human intelligence network. Within weeks, Earth knew more about collective military movements than the collective's own generals. War Chief Krelnock had survived the retreat from Earth, but his reputation hadn't. Once considered the collective's most capable military commander, he now found himself assigned to the pacification of minor rebellions, while his rivals handled the prestigious campaigns. The irony wasn't lost on him: the humans had wounded his pride as effectively as they had wounded his fleet. The Vaxian system should have been a simple operation. The local species were herbivorous pacifists who had never developed military technology beyond basic police forces. Their rebellion consisted mainly of work strikes and passive resistance easily crushed with a show of force. Then the human ship arrived. Krelnock watched from his command vessel as the alien craft dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. It was larger than the crude vessels they had faced at Earth, sleek and predatory in design. More concerning was its escort, a dozen smaller ships that moved with the coordinated precision of a pack hunt. "Analysis," he demanded from his tactical officer. "Unknown configuration, sir. The hull design incorporates collective materials, but the energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. And, sir, they're not responding to our surrender demands." Krelnock felt a chill of recognition. Of course they weren't responding to surrender demands. Humans didn't surrender, they adapted. The battle that followed became known as the Vaxian Liberation, and it fundamentally changed how the galaxy viewed warfare. The humans didn't attack the collective fleet directly. Instead, they systematically destroyed every piece of infrastructure the collective needed to maintain control. Communication relays, supply depots, administrative centers all vanished under precise, coordinated strikes. More importantly, they'd broadcast every moment of the battle across the galaxy. Species that had never imagined resistance possible watched as human forces dismantled collective authority with surgical precision. The message was clear. The collective could be beaten, and here was exactly how to do it. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in Earth's newly constructed Strategic Command Center, buried beneath the Rocky Mountains and shielded against everything short of direct nuclear assault. The holographic displays around her showed a galaxy in flux, with human forces operating on dozens of fronts simultaneously. "Status report," she requested from her staff. "Kepler 442 is secure," reported her operations chief. "Collective forces withdrew after losing 70% of their fleet. The Vaxians are requesting formal alliance. Alpha Centauri defense grid is operational. 3 more collective scouting attempts were repelled with no casualties. Intelligence indicates the collective is mobilizing their core fleets. Preliminary estimates suggest a force 10 times larger than their initial Earth expedition." Chen absorbed the information calmly. She had expected this escalation. Humanity had embarrassed the collective publicly, repeatedly. They would respond with overwhelming force, because that was all they knew how to do. "Recommendations?" she asked. Colonel Morrison's voice came through the secure channel from his ship near Vega. "Admiral, we can't fight them conventionally. Even with our technological advantages, they can field too many ships. But we don't have to fight them conventionally." "Explain." "The collective's strength is also their weakness. They're centralized, bureaucratic, predictable. Every decision goes through the High Council. Every order follows the chain of command. If we can disrupt their command structure, we turn their size against them." Chen finished. "Approved. Begin Phase 2 operations." Phase 2 of humanity's war against the collective began with something unprecedented in galactic history. A direct assault on the collective's home system. Not with warships or invasion fleets, but with information. Dr. Vasquez's enhanced viruses, carried by captured collective communication drones, infiltrated the very heart of the enemy's government. Within hours, classified military plans were being broadcast across the galaxy. Corruption within the High Council was exposed, and the locations of secret collective installations were revealed to every resistance movement in known space. High Councilor Zixthak found himself fighting a war on 2 fronts, against human forces in space and against his own crumbling authority at home. Collective member species, learning the truth about their benevolent leadership, began demanding independence. The bureaucrats who had grown fat on conquest found themselves facing the very populations they had oppressed. "My lord," his chief of staff reported, "we're receiving urgent requests for military support from over 200 systems. Our forces are spread too thin to respond effectively." "What about the core fleet? The reserve forces?" "Committed to the human front, my lord. War Chief Krulnak insists that defeating Earth is the key to restoring order." Zixthak laughed bitterly. The humans had never needed to destroy the collective militarily. They had simply forced it to destroy itself through overextension and internal rebellion. The final battle of the human collective war took place not in space, but in the halls of the collective High Council itself. Facing revolt across their empire and unable to maintain control through force alone, the Council voted to negotiate. Ambassador Veltar, his career ruined but his understanding of humanity finally complete, found himself once again tasked with dealing with the strange species from the Blue World. This time, however, he approached the negotiation table with proper respect. Admiral Chen met him aboard a neutral space station in the DMZ between human and collective space. The contrast with their first meeting was stark. Where once Veltar had been arrogant and dismissive, now he was cautious and respectful. "Admiral Chen," he began formally, "the High Council is prepared to discuss terms." "Terms?" Chen raised an eyebrow. "Ambassador, I think you misunderstand the situation. We're not here to negotiate our independence, we already have that. We're here to discuss what happens to the rest of the galaxy." Veltar felt the same chill of recognition he had experienced during their first contact. The humans weren't just seeking victory, they were seeking transformation. "What do you want?" "The same thing we've always wanted," Chen replied. "To be left alone to develop as we choose. The difference is, now we understand that our security depends on everyone else having that same choice." The treaty that emerged from those negotiations became known as the Galactic Accord. The collective would retain control of systems that genuinely chose to remain members, but would grant independence to any world that requested it. More importantly, they would respect a new principle that humanity introduced to galactic politics: the right of self-determination. 3 years after first contact, Ambassador Veltar stood once again on the bridge of a collective vessel approaching Earth. This time, however, he came not as a conqueror but as a petitioner. The collective, reduced to a fraction of its former size, but more stable for it, sought to establish formal diplomatic relations with the growing human alliance. As his ship approached Luna Station, now a massive facility that served as humanity's diplomatic center, Veltar reflected on how completely the galaxy had changed. Dozens of species that had been collective subjects were now independent worlds, many of them allied with Earth. Trade routes that had been controlled by collective bureaucrats were now open to all. And throughout known space, the idea of conquest itself had become unfashionable. The humans had done more than defeat the collective. They had changed the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. They had proven that size and technology meant nothing without the will to use them, and that the greatest strength was not the ability to conquer others, but the wisdom to let them be free. As Veltar prepared for another conversation with Admiral Chen, he finally understood the lesson his species had been too arrogant to learn the first time. In a galaxy full of civilizations that had forgotten how to fight, humanity had never forgotten how to be free. And now, thanks to them, no one would have to forget again. The age of conquest was over. The age of choice had begun, and it had started with a small blue world that refused to surrender.